Is it time to record another one of these things? Another back on the track, another bot. B-O-T-T. Lordy, I have been trying to... Well, I thought about making an outline to this because I do another podcast with my buddy Sean Nolan. We call it the Schwancast. Portmanteau, as it were, of Sean and Juan. The Schwancast. And he's done something very smart. Of course, he prefers it if we do a little bit of an outline to stay on track. We don't want to get derailed, as I did in the last episode of Back on the Track, formerly known as, what the hell was this called before? Rawcast. This isn't a podcast or a recording or a series about WWE or WWF Raw. I figure maybe some people were looking for that when they did a search for a wrestling podcast, and they ended up with my espousings, my drivel. Not here. So should I have... I started writing down some notes, but part of me was like, nah, talk extemporaneously. It'll help you. This is your kind of therapy time. The rapey time. Gotta expose myself to the world. Like the temple priestess at Babylon back in the day. Did you know, because I'm full of this kind of stuff, did you know that back in Babylon, way back in Babylon, apparently every woman in the city of Babylon had to be the temple whore for at least one day? I think maybe it was the most one day. What difference does it make? So anyone who was anyone could just come on in and have at it with them. And I don't know whether or not she could have said no or not, but where did I read this? A long time ago. I read this somewhere. Was this, I want to say Life Begins at Sumer, but I really doubt that. Maybe Secret Teachings of All Ages. I don't know where I read this. I don't know where I got this. But yeah, I mean, apparently some, it could be that you drew one day. If you're a woman, your day came up, you had to go to Babylon, you had to go to the temple and prostrate yourself for Ishtar or for the gods of Babylon. Let me mute these things. Okay, so now it's just you and me. Is this episode 3 or episode 2.5? I'm not quite sure. I figured maybe this could be episode 3. If you listened to the Schwancast number 2 at the very end, I talked about how I was going to maybe dive into reading some of Kurth Barker's satanic cannibal books. As exciting as that sounds. And then I got to thinking about that because, A, I haven't gotten around to taking notes on those books yet. And 2, I thought about a grander kind of sort of schema or presentation for all this. Not everybody likes to listen to things that are rather extemporaneous. I know many people do, but some people who prefer a bit more structured rather just get to the brass tacks and hear a full-blown presentation on certain subjects and how they, and then from there extrapolate what they deem as lessons. And as Sean was relating in the first Schwancast, they get their why. They get their, personal reason as to why they listen to what they do and apply to whatever life they may be living. So I understand this podcast isn't, a barrel of laughs, except for me probably, and the people who just enjoy listening to this and just tear it apart. If this raises enough interest in anybody to waste their own time to do that, if that makes any sense. But I got to thinking about this. I thought, okay, am I going to really sit down and read excerpts from this guy's book about satanic cults and cannibals and how these people just, exist just to be evil, essentially. They just go out of their way just to do evil and be evil. A long time ago, I used to pray all the time, when I was a young man, I used to pray often, very, very young man. And one time I had asked God to show me what evil felt like. And I kid you not, it was just as if there was some dial of goodness, like that was tuned down to like 0 and then -10 or -11. If we're going to go to 11, goes all the way to 11. And I just felt totally numb. I just felt like kind of like, okay, nothing. Flash forward all these years later to when, my studies have taken me to reading about satanic cults and so forth. And I think it is in Invoking the Beyond by the Collins brothers, where they talk about how evil is just, it's nothing else but the absence of good. It's just nothing. It's just utterly nothing. Nothing. And that it's not even indifference. And indifference is sort of just, it's still, if you're self-aware enough, you can sort of tell when you're indifferent to something, but this is not that. It's just numbness. It's as if, it's what I imagine, I guess maybe psychopathy probably, quote unquote, feeling like, based on my studies of it. It's not supposed to feel like anything in particular. It's just maybe mere intensely selfish curiosity and getting off on whatever results you get, just for the next one and for the next one. It's just pure base animalism, if you can call it that, in motion. And consequences be damned. And it's not even one of those, again, it's not even one of those self-aware moments. It's just one of those things that that's who you are. You go from one thing to another. And it's incredibly self-serving. And if you can even call it like some fun or a modicum of fun that you're having to do that, that's the pleasure principle that kicks in as I burp in your ears. So I thought about this and trying to apply it to whatever I want to share it is with you guys, because I feel like the days that we're living in now, as biblical as this sounds, right? It's not the end of days. I mean, it's easy to say that, but I've been around long enough to know that whenever, that's hoity-toityed around the end of days, unless you think of it as an extremely long-term kind of sequence, a window of time, then you can't think of it as the end of days as, you can't apply it to like the end of summer. I remember when I was younger and I heard about the Nostradamus prophecy. This is around like late 1990s, like, before the 2000s hit. Because at that point, if you were a certain, bent or sensitivity, you would think that, or gullibleness, I guess I should say it, then you would think that the end of, the Armageddon was right around the corner. It was the strangest kind of, time, honestly. I don't know. It was sort of like, if you believed all of these, prophecies and all these things were true, then, doomsday was just, you can feel the hooves of the four horsemen of the apocalypse gradually approaching you at that point in time in the late 90s, right? And I was young enough and gullible enough to, open enough, maybe I shouldn't say gullible exactly, but open enough to be like, oh my God, is this the end of days? And you know what? Perversely, a part of me on the inside really, really wanted that to happen. As crazy as this sounds and as selfish and insane as that might sound. Why? Because at that point in my life, I was going to school or high school or whatever. I wasn't having exactly the best time. And these are, moments I look back upon every once in a while, especially these days, because I wonder, and I don't want to go off on a side tangent here, but I wonder how much of that I truly, truly, truly took advantage of. It's really hard. It's really hard to want to be yourself, and in a weird way, in an environment where you're learning how to be yourself when you're in your like early mid-teens, right? Which is what I was in this period of time, the like mid to late 90s. And at the same time, trying to live up and be, I don't know, meet the certain expectations that other people have amongst your peer group. Think of it this way. When you were in high school, right? Or even middle school, and you're not exactly something in your wiring maybe doesn't want you to step up and fit in, as it were, right? Because there's always a bit of worriness and wanting to, like, especially for me, I don't know about any of you guys ever listening to this, but there's a bit of worriness that happens in wanting to constantly fit in with the group, right? It's sort of like the weird westernized, I don't even know if this is strictly Western, as it were, right? But or maybe just human group mentality where you just want to just be amongst people and not cause a fuss, but also be accepted. But the trick of it is that you want to be accepted, and you also want to be admired a little bit, or just fit in, or just, be in good company, as it were, so that you don't feel threatened. And that you don't feel threatened, and that maybe you can make more friends and be social and be positive, and at the end of the day go home thinking it was a good day. Even then, and that you just want to live your life and get good grades, or continue your career as to whatever it is you're feeling like you're destined to become. You just want to make friends, basically, right? So all of that, that I just said, when you're lacking in all of that, or you're not sure, or you're lacking in direction, which is, I feel like for maybe a good majority of my life, maybe even now, I feel like a spinning compass wheel a little bit, or a lack of direction that happens. In the mid to late 90s, with, this doomsday propaganda eminently approaching, apparently, that to someone like me who was maybe still is rather rudderless and wants the best in life but isn't getting it, and inside you just feel like utter shit, or just not if not utter shit, then just kind of like mismanaged, as it were, and the environment isn't exactly where you imagine yourself to be. Isn't exactly, well, I mean, come on. We're like, if you're in high school, if you're a teenager, then how often does this live up to your expectations? Or maybe conversely, it's like maybe you're supposed to make the most out of it. You're supposed to, apply yourself to sports and become, a jock or something. And when I was growing up, there were two guys who, seemed to find the right fitting. They weren't exactly against total jocks, but at the same time, they weren't total, the stereotype dunderheads either. They were actually very, very, very intelligent people. But when you're in that zone where you just want life to end, so you don't have to go through the misery. That's what I'm getting at. The misery, the existential angst, to just sort of come to an end. And this is how it happens, right? It's like the beginning of oh my God, that Lars von Trier movie with Melancholia with Kirsten Dunst, where everything just comes apart, right? Static electricity emitting from her fingertips. One planet smashes into another, or the moon in this case, right? Smashes into the planet. And you want something larger than yourself to happen, so you can look around at everybody and in one way or another point to what's going on, and you look at them and you say, "Ha, see, I told you so. You shouldn't have taken this so seriously. It's over now." You kind of want that to happen so that you can believe in something larger than yourself and say, "There, told you. You idiots. Why were you investing so much of your time into this weird, crazy life?" And To my shame, now, I think I admit, I still feel that way a little bit. I don't know what it is about my makeup, right? That still feels like, not that the end is coming. I sort of like, when I went through that, phase, right? Where I in the late 90s when I was growing up, and you feel like the apocalypse is going to happen, and it's written as prophecies and so forth, and then it doesn't happen. And then, I remember staying up late at the very last day of July, which, incidentally, this will probably be released on, funny enough. Watching, the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, thinking, okay, Nostradamus, at any time now, it's going to happen. The Nostradamus prophecy that starts off with, in the year 1999, in 7 months, the great king of terror will come from the sky. And of course, I would talk to certain people about the certain friends. It's like, what do you think this means? Thinking like, oh shit, here it comes. Maybe. And that almost that yearning really to have that thing happen, so that all the, I don't want to say studies, but the things that you sort of quasi look into as a dalliance maybe occur, so that you can say, okay, see everybody, see, you try to be a little bit of a jerk, kind of like, have that arrogance, say, okay, see the stuff I look into, it's true. Shit's happening. And in that, what is it that I'm trying to show people? I read so damn much. I read so that I look into things and I feel like, okay, maybe by going into stuff, I can come out of it and I can show people, something that they can prize amongst themselves, some sort of like, pearl in the oyster that's shut in some sort of hidden murky depths. Right? I'm not sure that's the case anymore. I mean, maybe I kid myself thinking that I don't want it to be the case anymore. I don't know what it is about, like I said, I don't know what it is about my makeup that I feel like I have to, do that. Maybe some sort of self-justification or insecurity maybe, that I have to, constantly enforce, because I come from a very insecure place. Could be that. Hold on a moment. And I'm back. I still don't have a desk. I'm still broadcasting from a luxurious location. Actually, it's probably going to turn out to be my studio or office or whatever. But in light of all I just said, though, do I even deserve, or should I, or am I fooling myself into thinking, why am I getting a studio or a office, area? It's a nice little, like, kind of lofty area here in my house. And again, it's so funny because I have this, Sean and I talk about craft and artistry in our show together, right? And I don't want to keep plugging the show, but it's like that's, where I have the outlet to, speak sort of frankly about writing and screenwriting in particular, but it can be applied to any creative craft, any creative pursuit, right? And sometimes, you see, I come into my, craft or writing or creating or whatever, editing, video making, I don't know, with a kind of, it's not too different from what I just said, wanting to, go to the depths of myself, if that's the case, and trying to find some bit of, like, maybe evil that I just cannot reconcile consciously. It's a work that goes inward. And then from there, presenting it to the world in a somewhat dramatized form, I guess. Not all the time. Ideally, consciously, that's, I guess, what I would like to do. But presenting it in such a way that through the entertainment of, reading or, presenting a short or something, then it could, like I was telling Sean, it could provoke some sort of conscious kind of like intrigue in people, right? But now I'm wondering, is that even worth it? Have I just been kidding myself or aggrandizing myself into thinking that this is something that that I'm meant to do, or this is my calling or whatever. It's frustrating to see other people have a career and things that they may not even be passionate about, right? But they're still obtaining the funds, the Templar notes, the dollars, the currency, the bills, to live their life, which is in a weird way a challenge and also really unfair if you're thinking, okay, this is what I want to do with my life, and not that you'll be automatically rewarded for it, but damn it if you don't think that you should be a little bit, It's not that, I know this is an age-old complaint amongst writers or anybody really of creative of some sort of creative field or background, or even a contractor, for goodness sake, right? Some sort of practical fulfillment that that people sort of bring to one another in exchange for moolah, right? But for me, I always wondered recently, I think about how, am I kidding myself? It's a suspicion that started happening right around the time where I would publish stuff on Lulu, for instance, lulu.com, and I wouldn't get a return. As far you put so much into something, which is a separate subject, by the way, the amount of investment you put into something. I touched upon this when Sean and I were talking about a movie that we made together called Burnt Up a while back, where, and likewise there, where you put so much effort into something, and you would hope that somebody would just would somehow see through the veil, as it were. It's very occult. They see through the veil of what's there, and then they start to appreciate not just the work that you do, but what's beyond the veil. The ideas that are there, and you felt deeply into that. But it's strange because culture in the world that we live in now kind of thrives, or maybe it's been deliberately engineered to thrive on deliberate intrigue, a mystification. Something that can present people. People have depth. Maybe not everybody, but certainly a lot of people do. And my observation is, that I like to put forth to you guys, is that people respond to intrigue, but not just that, but they respond even better, or they respect if they've been around the block a few times in terms of living. Maybe, I don't know about multiple lives, but definitely having some experience in life, right? School of Hard Knocks, maybe, and all that. But they respond to people who can offer commentary on life. They can offer some sort of insight, philosophy, or whatever. I could go on about this, but people do respond to that. That's why there are so-called influencers out there that, which amazingly they look a lot like each other. It's a strange kind of like template that these people, like aesthetic business template that they fall into. Once you're an influencer and you have like over 100,000 people following you, it's like all of a sudden you clean up your act and you start taking photos that offer no ambiguity. Everything's super clear, everything's super arranged so that they look like this. I mean, sometimes I think about this generation, my generation, the people who have been born in the last 30, 40 years, and I see what they do online, right? Perhaps present company not excluded. And yet, they just look like, the contemporary salespeople for, as seen on TV, like, OxyClean or something. It's like these guys, they just come on, this ad will just appear on Instagram, for instance. And these guys, it's like these, It's almost as if they haven't learned. They're okay with accepting the would it be controversial to say mediocrity of, the things that were so despised back in the 90s, going back to the 90s really quick, and even the 80s and the 70s before that. The paid programming, the late night infomercials, this is what we've become. For as much as people, decry capitalism, it's so interesting how they will also fall into it in the way, right? The form that it takes, which is like the late night infomercial. Those things are still on, by the way. I don't watch TV as much anymore. I just don't do it, right? Because it's just, which is a double-edged sword. Because when the Olympics are on now, so I would like to see what's going on a little bit. But at the same time, if you watch TV for like 30 years, 40, 50 years, nothing changes. The template remains the same. Think about that. I used to watch TV again a lot when I was younger. And then when I got to college, I just stopped. I was like, this isn't good. I have to stop. I have to back off. I actually want to learn things in life, right? Much to my despair and sorrow. And rarely to my joy. But as the case may be, it was just when I go back to watch, something, I'll be at my parents' house or something, or even somebody else's place, even around New Year's when, people watch the ball drop, the Masonic ball drop, right? Like a point of gravity, pulling it down. Strangely enough, it's just like nothing's changed. Template's the same. Even when Twin Peaks came back, I thought, okay, let's see how this goes around this time. Because I was alive, but I wasn't, I didn't know what Twin Peaks was. I was too young for it, right? Not that Twin Peaks is this great saving grace or whatever, but for me, right, the return was like something like kind of like a joyous occasion, I suppose, because I paid attention, right, and I would tune in each week as Mark Frost and David Lynch wanted us to do, I guess, the loyal viewers. And wouldn't you know it, it was really, really, really an experience. And I don't know about any shows lately, as I've told people, I don't know about any shows lately that have done that. There's a whole other side to this too, which, for that I dread talking about now, lest I, derail again, which is in regards to, I guess for Twin Peaks, but any sort of television, quote unquote, programming. That's best saved for another time if I ever get to it, because it just becomes a really dense subject, and I kind of want to stick to the flow of conversation that I have going on right now. But anyway, yeah. What do you have when it's just TV the same for 30, 40 years, if that? Same commercials or not. Social agendas that are that are dramatized to stimulate a response from audiences, or to encourage them or to mold them, right? Sometimes I think about X-Files, and if you think about it phonetically, Fox Mulder, as X-Files was on the Fox network. Dana Scully, Mulder, you mold something. Scully, mold your head. I offer that to you to think about. So do I miss things in regards to, not following the status quo? Oh yeah. But at the same time, how much of that do you really miss? Going back to applying mild insecurity, or not even insecurity, inability to sort of not want to sort of go with the crowd sometimes. It's like life is big enough for the interesting stuff to happen, I think. Right? But the downside to that would be that, if you're sticking around looking for the interesting stuff, then maybe you become too self-involved, right? And then you have something, you're pressured into wanting to prove something to other people who are not on your bandwagon, who are not your friends, you know? How is it that you can turn that around? You know? Is it best to sort of just let things be, to just back off, to just live your life and, you know, like a sort of, in a quasi conscious state, I guess, right? Because, hey, if you look into this democracy thing long enough, or not even that long, I mean, it goes, I remember, did I refer to Mad Eye Moody in the previous episode of Back on the Track? Where Mad Eye Moody in the Harry Potter world, he, you know, his thing is constant vigilance. Constant vigilance. Because that's what, if you're endowed with freedom, you have to have vigilance. You have to make sure that it's not taken away from you. In this world, it's way too easy. In this world, it's even crazier to think that what we call freedom may not even be freedom at all. That's how crazy it is. Right? How can you think about these things? All these layers. You want to make sure that people, at least for somebody like me, that people aren't misled, aren't taken advantage of, right? And you remain skeptical, you remain vigilant, right? And then you don't follow crowds. You kind of want to, you know, follow your own drumbeat. As I mentioned in the last bot. Back on the Track. God, how that's even that abbreviation, that acronym was acrostic. No, yeah, acrostic. That's that's telling. It's like, this guy is talking about freedom. For fuck's sake, it shows, and when you break it down, it stands for bot, like robot. You can't get away with anything. Not that I want to get away with shit, but you know what I mean. So where is the point of demarcation? Where is the separation? where is the point where you kind of just want to back off and you say, listen guys, all this is not what you think it is. And what's the other point where it's like, shit, nobody's listening to me. What am I doing wrong? Do you even want to, you know, continue with this? Is this even worth it? Who knows? I'm not here to try to get pity. It's not what I'm doing. At least I hope not consciously. There were times where I feel like I've been doing that in recordings from a long time ago, but not so much now. Now I don't care. Now it's like, all right, here you have your mess. Now how are you going to deal with it? And of course, you take to the internet. You take to mediums that maybe other people will eventually. Why is that? Why do we feel like we have to have some sort of validation? Why is it that I want to, you know, put this out there for somebody to listen to so I can feel good about myself in the long run, you know? Is it a career insecurity that I have? Wanting to, you know, say to the world, see, like, again, saying to the world, okay, well, look at this. See? Aren't I special? I did this. Nobody else does this, even though everybody does this now. Really, everybody. I went to, when I went, before COVID, when I went to, oh God, was it NAB? The NAB conference in New York? There were panels on how everybody's going to start podcasting. This was back in like 2019. How podcasting was going to become progressively bigger. How companies were going to just start doing podcasts as part of their, I don't know, PR, social outreach. Really, what's the difference between those two? Social outreach. Give me a break. Are you kidding me? We have to make sure that we're changing the world. Everybody has to change the world. I want to read to you something I found. I read a million books at the same time. And I'm reading Windswept House by Malachi Martin. And that book, man, if you want, that book was published in 1996, I believe. And it tells you, like the technocrats, it just tells you like how decisions are made in the world. It's just it's blatant. I mean, within the first, like even with the prologue, he just breaks it down for you where it's like, okay, you know what? You have structure of economy and you have structure of religion and how these two sort of have to meet to sort of be on the same page. They sort of acknowledge each other, right? And then going down the line, these guys who set up this, unified world, they're partaking in a satanic ceremony. This is in the prologue. And it's not even just any old satanic ceremony. They'll do something in the Vatican. And at the same time, because the guys who are running the ceremony, who are higher ups, they're not like schmoes, they're like, Gothic douches who are breaking into the Vatican to conduct their, animal sacrifices. No, they're big time douches who already have pre-arranged seating conducting their animal/human sacrifices. Not just in the Vatican. They have to, because some of the paraphernalia is too, let us say, not to mix my religions here, kosher. They have to have a simultaneous, like sort of kind of like a FaceTime ceremony somewhere else. And it turns out to be, I think if I remember this right, in North Carolina. And with a Roman Catholic bishop that apparently in the book is sympathetic to all this. Pizzagate, because you can't say pizza gate because maybe the algorithm will bring you down, the YouTube algorithm. Anyway, I digress. There's this really, really, really great quote that I want to read to you that I posted on Twitter. And the reason I posted it on Twitter because it's very timely. 1996. This is from Windswept House by Father Malachi Martin from his book, Windswept House, pages 126 to 127 from the first edition, the hardcover edition. Now, before I go and read this, I should clarify something because, look, I love having an accessible world. It's not like, I'm anti-globalist or any of these terms. It's really interesting when you want to have a debate with anybody or you want to, discuss these sort of controversial topics. Even they're like 30 years old now, 40 years old at this point. Come on. How controversial does it have to be? Right? These terms are so charged that it's like they're almost built in so that you can't disagree with them. Like Black Lives Matter, for instance. You want to say all lives matter, of course. Black, like the black life. Of course, you want to say all lives matters, right? But the thing is, if you say you're anti-Black Lives Matter, what does that immediately? What does that conjure up in your mind? What's the first animal reaction that you get? It starts with the letter R, I think. And as such, in regards to globalism, this has been bugging me for like decades. Because when you look into this kind of conspiracy shit, and it's very prevalent. It's really part of it is definitely real. I think anyway. You're gonna get people who are like they're the globalists this, the globalists that, and you're thinking, well, don't we live in a global world, right? Of course, it seems redundant to say it, but you have to scratch past the surface and you have to see what these people are getting at a little bit. And I don't want to sound like the person I was describing earlier, right? Myself, I don't want to sound an alarmist or anything like that. But maybe I should sound alarmist. The thing is, the people who engineer, quote unquote global policies, they like to describe themselves as something that appears evident in order to get you to go along with it. I wanted to save this for Sean because I was going to talk about hopefully in our next episode, I wanted to bring up House of Games and David Mamet. Maybe somehow kind of. I don't know the outline for the next episode. It's going to be for the Schwancast. But I thought, okay, maybe we'll talk about David Mamet in House of Games because that's a great movie. Even Kubrick, for damn sake, Kubrick watched House of Games and he's like, that's a great title. And evidently, the guy who co-wrote Eyes Wide Shut, before it was called Eyes Wide Shut. I think the author's name is Frederick Raphael. And his memoir, I think Eyes Wide Open, we'll talk about Kubrick just being enamored with that title, like House of Games. What was it? House of Games for? Well, I'm sorry, maybe it's for Full Metal Jacket, not Eyes Wide Shut, but still has that kind of like staccato kind of thing to it. House of Games, right? And in House of Games, Joe Mantegna is just that sort of like the head con man, and he explains it to you in the beginning of the movie, like the first act, right? He's like, hey, by the way, con man just means confidence. You have to give your trust to something in order for it to work, to sort of have its way with you. Because that way you don't feel like you're being conned. You don't feel like you're being tricked. And it's this great scene with him and Lindsay Krause in this bus station with William H. Macy playing this returning serviceman. And just for shits and giggles, Joe Mantegna goes over to Lindsay Krause and says, okay, watch this. I'm going to show you how it's done. And was going to extract, I think, this guy's bus ticket home, if I remember the scene correctly. But at the very end of the scene, Joe Mantegna is like, no, you know what? Never mind. Here you go. Because it's that easy. Because we have to stop thinking of like the politicians or whoever these people are as your friends. It's easy to think that they might be. And if you know them personally, if you think, okay, you know what? These guys, they're really not that bad. That's great. And and that's certainly possible. But it's really, 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 really off-putting to me, at least, how political parties especially have to march in step. And as another side note, before I read this Malachi Martin thing, this Malachi Martin quote from Windswept House. Looking into Charles Manson, and fuck me, if, the media, as of last year, hasn't been doing some sort of helter-skelter. Manson didn't do it. Manson, like Marlon Brando in Godfather. Manson's a pimp. Like, remember that scene in Godfather Part 1? Where he goes, D'Italia's a pimp? Never could have fought Santino? Manson's a pimp. But the thing is, he's a pimp who knew the occult, basically. Is that crazy? It's nuts, man. Let me read this quote by Malachi Martin. It was capital for the process that change had now become the dominant trait of human society. Minds were being changed. Living language itself was being molded by changing minds. The vocabulary of politics and geopolitics was the vocabulary of change. Internationalism had made way for multinationalism, for example. Then transnationalism took center stage. Very soon, it would be globalism. At every level of life, minds, and society itself were being molded and remolded by the never-ending chain reaction of change. Society had come to the brink of recasting its basic structure, shedding its cocoons of separatism. Universalism would soon bring all men and women into one family, one embrace. When change becomes the slogan and the watchword of society at large, the evolution that is the process becomes ever more acceptable, ever more respectable, ever more inevitable. Change. Loose change. We need to bring change. Why did I mention Manson before? Because even a guy like that, because he knew the tricks, he learned them in prison, for goodness sake. If you read the books, it goes into Scientology. Talks about how he learned Scientology. Talks about how he learned the occult. Talks about how he dabbled in Rosicrucianism. You don't know these things from school. Why? You learn the surface narrative. You learn the surface narrative of things, approved by these people in order to get society, quote unquote, to function. But the truth of it is that they just pull you along. And then they work you to that so they work to get your abeyance, obedience. So you go along with it. Is it so bad? Living maybe at most 60, 70 years of your life, maybe 80, 90 to 100 even, is go through life, live day by day, procreate, save, work. Stretching my legs. And not wanting to care about the bigger picture. I don't know. Maybe all this, to double back on what I was saying earlier, maybe all this is sort of my personal therapy to let go of caring so much. Because as it is now, people want to live their lives and just be told what to do. Really, they why would they care about anything else? It's not like it's not as if people do strive to. All right, I guess I'll say it this way: when the Revolutionary War was happening, and we are living with the effects of that, right? This current life. How is it that more people aren't as, I don't know, why aren't the lessons of that implicit in more people? That you could fight an empire and then get away with it. Again, maybe not get away with it, but you fight against it, and again, surface narrative, right? You fight against it in order to just stake your claim. But maybe on another level, there were backroom dealings because these people, you don't like to think of them as that way, but they could have made deals behind the scenes with the British, through the secret societies, Freemasonry, and others, to leverage what was going to be the new world order of the time, which is what we're living with today. It's strange talking about this stuff so openly. I know many people do it. It's strange. It's strange and uncomfortable for me because I'm in a milieu, or at least I thought of myself being in a milieu, not anymore, where you don't talk about this kind of stuff. You're using language and verbiage that only the kooks in the conspiracy world use, right? That's how they think of it as, because they don't allow their minds to expand, as it were, to consider these alternate kind of viewpoints. I was growing up, and it's like there's this adolescent. There's this arrested development that happens, right? Where you just want things to be cool and appear cool, where you get to a point where it's like Quentin Tarantino almost, where it's like you just want things to happen that are cool and they make sense and they just motivate the story and the plot, and it makes it like awesome, and now we have like an entire culture like that, where it's just built on these sort of like pseudo orgasmic highs all the time. These sort of pseudo quasi-religious experiences that you have with other people in the theater, maybe, or online for that matter. Buzzing like the hornet's nest or a beehive, which incidentally is one of the symbols amongst many of Freemasonry and those kinds of organizations, right? The esoteric stuff. Why is it that on one level you have these Freemasonic guys who, if you work in bureaucracy or in the government, you're sort of almost obliged to become one of these people. And then you don't have to, but if you're really curious and you want to go deeper, what do you end up looking at when you're in those societies? The esoteric. Esoterica. Why? Why are there two conjoined? It's not. You see, these things are so obvious that you don't even notice them. Maybe Bott back on the track, also stands for me being a robot for these people who I've learned all this stuff from over the years. And I'm just, echoing their teachings or their sentiment. And I'm just nothing but like a drone, droning on and on and on, like another bee. What's fascinating is that if you take this into as a whole, you'll realize that it's like you start to see the structure a little bit of, it's like reading Dune. When you read Dune, these people who are the Bene Gesserit, right? These people have a grasp of how to form a society. The Bene Gesserit witches or sisterhood or whatever, right? They dabble in bloodlines and DNA for extended periods of time, like vast periods of time. You look into this kind of stuff, and you start to get the impression that, okay, I'll say it this way. It's like when you read the biographies or the memoirs of, people who are like in the upper crust of society, especially in Britain, like 19th, 20th century. And a lot of movies, a lot of the so-called, middle to lower class works of art that criticizes the upperclassmen, right? It's not to say that they're invalid, but the thing is, they're written from a certain point of view. Whereas if you read the works by these people, yeah, it's not the condescension and the snobbery is certainly there, of course, in the intellect, if you can even call it that. But the thing is, they think of themselves through breeding and through culture, their own culture, right, as like these, majestic managers. And of course, we're looking at these people like, ugh, how snobbish, how dare they? And it inspires a kind of revulsion or repugnance. And yet, what those people know isn't disqualified by how you feel about them. Right? It's no secret that, high finance and, high politics and power brokers and gangsters, they're not too far removed from each other, even corporatism. Jeff Bezos just went to the moon. The moon, wow, really? No, that's not true. See, the programming kicking in. Jeff Bezos just went out to space, right? He's a space ball now. Literally, he went up to space in a space ball. They don't care, man. They don't care about you. Just like whatever. Can you believe it? All these things are linked. Of course they're linked. They want to make you think that it's not linked. That's the problem. And they try to gaslight you and they try to insult you into thinking that none of this is connected. And then they decry you, and then they want people to have higher education. Well, this is the royal road to higher education right here. When you start to realize that these things are connected and they know about it, and they'd rather you not know about it. It's as simple as that. Really, it's not too far. It's not too different than learning anything else. It's just edging over that wall, the disbelief, right? That stuff like this could be happening. They've got people that you've never met who don't know what you are. They don't care about what you look like. Well, maybe in a statistical sense, maybe. So they can leverage some sort of race war happening, maybe. As crazy as that sounds. This stuff is crazy sounding, absolutely. I agree. I mean, really. I mean, maybe I should be making a podcast about video games or something, or just films. I don't know. But if you open your mind up a little bit, for better or for worse, and you read this, and you read these people's books, and it's like, okay, you hear what they say, and they're like totally tone deaf. They won't care what you think. They just do what they want. And ironically enough, when you aspire to be more, wealthy or financially independent or whatever, and these are the people that are propped up for you to sort of aspire to be, as it were, right? You read the books, and it's just sort of everything is sort of just kind of like low key Satanism. It's like these people were like, well, especially if you read one book. Oh my God, what's it called? How Rich People Think. I think Steve Siebold or something, right? And it's all like kind of like you have to get over the and I think Rich Dad Poor Dad does this too, where it's like you have to get over the training, the emotional reaction to having money. You have to think about how money is an objective way. That way you can control it, or that way it won't control you, and yada, 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 right? Which partially is true, because it is like, maybe it's a deliberate class thing, because not having money is traumatic as shit. Are you kidding me? Even the terms, being poor, being broke. Even when you're whole, there's still a hole, right? It's like, come on. You're incomplete. All of a sudden, you go through this, and you go through the process of getting your first 100,000. As Charlie Munger said, it's the bitch, but you have to do it, right? Because then after that, it's not smooth sailing, but then it's like you're a world player now, right? Even if you read the Rockefeller book, was it David Horowitz and that other guy? Once these people get money, then it's like the world is their oyster. They can just, invest and, move that fluidity around, that influence around. And then that can influence culture. And then culture, well, I mean, it's business, but then you get something that thrives, then business becomes a culture. And culture informs you. So it's not too separated from all this stuff. Which brings me back to my own personal issue, my own personal ish about all this, right? Regardless if it's just subjective, and it's subjective to me and the other quote unquote kooks. How dare I assign myself the same appellation as them? Whether I and all my fellow peeps want to try to warn you of this stuff, regardless if it's really happening or not, It's like my wife says, who cares? Who cares if it's happening or not? At the end of the day, you just want to abide these people. It's like, can you imagine like being like a Native American when the Europeans arrive, when Columbus arrives, all these people arrive, right? And they have their guns and they have their, blankets full of, whatever. And they come with their own strict psychopathic hierarchical structure. And they're known for, demonizing your population. What do you want to do? What are you doing when you're face to face with these psychopaths? You ever talked to a psychopath? I think I've maybe have twice. The first time you talk to them and it's like nothing. It's like you're not even. It's like. How can I put this? It's like then they look at you. They don't see a person. It's like when you're reading a book and you see the words on the page. You see the text, the black on the white. That's what it feels like. It just feels like you're those dark elements, those elements that they just need for you to just for them to just do their next thing. That's the first one. That's the psychopath with the capital P, maybe. The second time I had that was probably maybe more sociopathic. This was more recently. And they're obsessed with, because they're not exactly a psychopath, they're more like a proto-psychopath, in the words of Thomas Sheridan. They're not exactly full-blown, but they're traumatized enough to want to keep the psychopathic process alive. So they're very much married to process. And don't think of you as a human being. They don't. They think of you as just one more cog in the wheel. That's it. You're expendable. You're replaced. Hey, whatever. I remember a friend of mine who worked at a high school. He was friends with somebody who was like also a teacher there, and they were doing layoffs. And this guy and this teacher that was there for a long time got laid off, and my friend's colleague said, "Better her than me." Yep, that's it. So is it really any surprise that, the world's so fucked up when teachers are feeling like this? Where, you get more of an education if teachers are vastly more transparent about their own process with their own students, at least in the public school level, even the college level too. It's like, I mean, I'm going on and on, I get it. But at the same time, it's like all this stuff is linked, right? You think about this. It's like, if teachers just told students how it is the school is run and the pressures and the injustices that they are going to feel that as adults they already feel in this structure, that if you think, it's bullshit, that if the lesson plans are bullshit, then you should see what's going on behind the scenes, right? Why hasn't that ever happened? Has that ever happened? Where, there's one class, or at least there's always a segment of class where it's like, by the way, let's talk about the bureaucracy of the environment that we're in, right? Let's talk about the teachers' unions. Let's talk about, the taxes that we have to keep raising in the town in order to have jobs, in order to have the salaries. Let's talk about lessons plans that had to be, confirmed by the state. Doesn't happen. Didn't happen for me. Maybe it happened for you guys, but certainly not for me. So with all this, again, is this even worth going into? Yes and no. Because this is the world we live in now. The more you understand this kind of stuff, the more, you research and you read things. I mean, everything just goes back to, like, I guess, the satanic on the surface level, right? All these people who, do research into these, like, weird, crazy ass shit. And they're always in their roundabout way going to talk about how fucked up something is and how duplicitous these people were. And these duplicitous people are, I guess, criminals, but they're also in government. And how we must have a change, right? And how the system can still work, but we just have more honest people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Take that veneer away. What do you end up with? I'm not talking about evil people, but you're talking about just, the thriving, satanic, whatever this is, if you want to call it that. And that's the superficial stuff. It's crazy. But beyond that, people know. People know, and they don't want to interrupt the beast, right? That's what's so nuts about this. And hey, look, full religious kind of like, transparency here. Look, I grew up being raised a Roman Catholic. I stopped that process the older I got. But the damage, as it were, was done. I got baptized. I got took communion. But then after that, I didn't do confirmation. The whole, joy of being in a non-Gnostic, Gnostic process. Well, I don't know. I'll probably get in trouble for that by Roman Catholics. But it's like, when I got old, like, I got to stop this because, first of all, the pedophile stuff was just through the fucking roof. It's just insane. And on top of that, it's just like out of touch. It's like these old guys that just come onto the scene all the time, right? So when I say satanic stuff, it's like, how can I put this? It's not that I don't. It's not like I don't believe. There's this presence that is active, right? Maybe it's a kind of an antipodean force in human nature, right? If you want to look at it psychologically. However, a part of me has a nasty suspicion that there's more to this than just this, right? If you read something like Windswept House, you'll get a grasp of what I'm trying to talk about. Or even if I get around to even reading, excerpts from the Kurth Barker cannibalism stuff, That's something else. I mean, it's it's not I mean, oh my god, the story isn't different, right? Than what you already know if you grew up, in a westernized world. The past 100, 200 years, it's like there's God, Jesus, and Satan, and Satan, blasphemous, but he's like he's like the prince of the world, as it's called. So what does this all matter? You don't want to serve the beast, but also too, it's like which is worse? Not wanting to do anything, right? Because you might be full aware of what the consequences are. And when you deal with this kind of stuff, you just throw. I think you throw caution to the wind. I guess you have to at one point, right? But it's like you have to just say, I don't fucking care. Just go for it. And you just try to do the change that you want to see, right? On the other hand, you don't do it because you know what the consequences are. Right? And it's not unreasonable. People get punished. Awful things happen. You become patsies. The patsies happen. People just, want to live their lives and they don't want to rock the boat. Ironically, they want their children to be safe, right? They want their children to be happy, and they want their children to just have a fun life or a blessed life. But, you want to look into these things, and you want to strive towards that. And there is an implicit kind of maybe this kind of stuff speaks to the negative in people. Somebody like me, a little bit. Too much. And maybe I should learn to stop studying it or reading into it or whatever, or even trying to share it. Because it doesn't do much. And at the end of the day, it goes back to, me wanting to do much more with my life and me, wanting to show people one thing or another and say, hey, listen, look at this. Isn't this crazy? And just getting that sweet validation saying, yeah, it kind of is. And what should we do about it? Because you're right. I don't know. Maybe I should just learn to not care as much, right? That's antithetical to wanting, bleeding hearts. Please change the world. We have to change the world. We have to stop that. Regarding of liberals or whatever. It's or liberals or conservatives as it were. It's please, we have to stop. We have to change. This is insanity. It's like the world's going to just go to crap. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe you should just enjoy the ride. As crazy as that sounds. It's right. Like the Mangler. Mr. Bone Stripper. It's whatever it is. Just want to get past the world so that you can just live. Right? Right? I'm always, maybe I should end it like this. I'm always afraid I'm going to believe in the wrong thing. Always, always, always. And I get so insecure that I read, right? And I try to feel out what my emotions are. And my friend Sean, back when we used to go to school, he would, I commented on the other podcast, the Schwancast I did with him, the first episode, I think. His stuff was always more put together. His work would be more put together than mine. And I would just bring in gobbledygook. Now I look back on it. It's things that weren't figured out, much like this podcast, much like this episode, I guess. And I always try to work it out. And Sean paid me a very nice compliment the other day in the second episode because he turned it around on me and he wanted to know what my process was and what I was thinking. What were you thinking? When I would bring this stuff in. And I don't know if it was in the second or the first episode. He said, but you got it right though, because you were supposed to bring in stuff into class that you were still working out, stuff that was probably all over the place, and it was school, because you come into school, go back to school again, and you want to do good work, but the path to getting there may not be as easy or as obvious as you may think it is. What's even worse is that the people who are, through books or who are giving you, lessons and teachings, as it were, you might not be receptive to that. I mean, at least not immediately. And that's why it's probably helpful to, revisit certain books and certain, teachings over an extended period of time, because then you'll get illuminated, as it were, become an Illuminati, right? And then after that, you're supposed to have a better grasp of what it is, maybe your discipline that you're supposed to be doing, or have some sort of insight, right? Well, maybe that's what I'm doing with these shows. Is just trying to vocally and in a way viscerally kind of express my own, habits or insecurities or fears. That not they would otherwise lie dormant, but it's different when you write these things out. Like I take a million notes before I start something. And by doing that, it just tears me up on the inside. But then when I go back to revisit the notes, it's sort of like, seeing something that somebody else wrote. I used to be like, what the hell did I mean with this? What did I, and they're incomplete. They're not like full sentences, the notes. And you're wondering, what was this? What was all this? So I always get scared that not only do I believe the wrong thing, but I'll stick up for the wrong thing, and the reverse. I'll believe the right thing, but I don't say too much to defend it. It's scary though. It's so twisted. I'm aware of how kind of fucked up that is. maybe not to the depths of maybe not to the extent of what I think it may be, but still, right? It's kind of weird. Maybe it's a past life thing. I don't know. How do you just get that trepidation where it's like, okay, if you're going to talk about something, you better figure out what it is that you want to talk about, and you better have some sort of grasp of what it is before you even open your mouth. That's why elections for me, like, town elections or, municipal or even federal or whatever, those election days, they're like, for what I don't know about now, but before, maybe a few years ago, it was just, no, maybe still now actually. It's just really kind of dreadful for me to go through that because, first of all, I mean, if you take it seriously, and I take it very, very seriously, I that's why I do the reading and the work that I do, right? To at least try to make sure that, you don't end up, with your head up your ass. And how it's so when election day would come by, it would just be insufferable. I'm like, how do people know for sure what the right course of action is when you're presented with two options, at the most, at the point of entry, right, at the point of decision point, to choose? I don't know. So, I don't know. I don't know who I am. I hope this wasn't too rambly. I think I had a good time with this. Let's see what happens when I play it back. But any last points before we adjourn for now? I'm still trying to figure it out, just like everybody else is. I got nothing further or nothing less than what I already have. And life will just teach me more. And that's part of the agony of it. Because sometimes life does not give a shit about what it is that you're studying, or what it is that you want, or what it is. It just doesn't work that way, sadly. Sometimes life will, and it's up to you and your, consciousness and your nervous system and your magic, as it were, to, reinterpret life. You observe things in life and you recognize things in life, and then from there you wield your magic and you intend and your intent to put forth what it is that you want out there. Alan Watt used to say at the very end of each show he used to do, "May your God or your gods go with you." Excuse me, very burpy. I don't know what I say at the end of mine, but we're all trying to figure it out. And if we're worse off the wear for it, well then fuck. And if we're not, well, that's even better. So, from my attic, I didn't say the date. It is Tuesday, July 27th. It is 2:54 p.m. It is time to wrap the show up. I think I'm exhausted from just all this output. Thank you for being in my attic with me as I output. Someone had to be here. All right, everyone. That's it. I could go on, but why? I don't know if this is Back on the Track episode 2.5 or episode 3. This is probably beefy enough to be in episode 3, right? And we'll see you later, alligators. In a while, crocodiles. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, testing, all of it. I am the very model of a modern major general, the information natural, vitamin and mineral. We say the king's of the circle.